Folks, when Lindsey Graham passed away, we all know that President Trump made a move to nominate his sister, Darlene Graham, and she was appointed as the interim senator of South Carolina, a caretaker, temporary, just to hold the seat until South Carolina could pick a replacement. And that's a story we covered in depth. But there's a new part. What I'm looking at is Trump's second move. Okay. Filing for that permanent seat opens July 21st. The primary is August 11th. There's a runoff on August 25th. And if nobody clears 50%, that'll happen. Whoever wins probably ends up chairing the Judiciary Committee, the same gavel that Graham was about to pick up. And that committee is exactly where a Supreme Court nomination gets fought. And it'll be fought whether a retirement comes down the pike or not. Now, President Trump has already told Newsmax he has a guy. And his guy is Russell Fry, and he's outstanding. Now, Fry is a sitting congressman, South Carolina's 7th District. Trump personally backed him to run for that House seat 4 years ago. I ran with Russell. He's a good man. But recently, Senator Tim Scott, the man actually running point on this race for Senate Republicans, he went public with a different name. Okay? A name entirely different than Russell Fry. And neither one of them is Trump's guy. There's a crowded field. Nancy Mace, Ralph Norman, they're circling this race. Norman's reportedly already asked Trump directly for his endorsement. But Scott isn't talking about either of those folks today. He's talking about Trey Gowdy. Tim Scott has been calling him multiple times a day, trying to get him in the race. And Scott's got a real case for him, according to Scott and Gowdy. I used to like Gowdy, okay? But he spent 8 years in the House, made his name chairing the Benghazi Committee. He grilled Hillary Clinton over what happened in Libya. Scott says he'd slot right into the judiciary because of the same prosecutorial background that Lindsey Graham had. Now, look, before we get excited about that, okay, you have to understand why Trey Gowdy left Congress in the first place, in his words. See, back in 2018, on his way out the door, Gowdy said that he likes jobs where fairness matters, where the process matters. He's more at peace in jobs that reward fairness and that are fact-centric. More than what he gets in Congress, according to him. And somebody asked him straight up, hey, Trey, don't the facts matter in Congress? And he said he thinks what matters in Congress is finding a group and then validating or ratifying what they already believe. Folks, Trey Gowdy is not the kind of guy we want. Okay? Trey Gowdy is the guy who will tell us on record that Congress is full of people looking for validation, not the truth, which is partially true. But he quit. He said he's a lousy politician. Those are his words. So that's how he felt then. Why would Tim Scott want to drag him back into the exact same, the same building, but different wing? Who knows? But I know one thing that's not being mentioned. Okay? The conservative scorecards. I mean, Gowdy's record is not a slam dunk. And there's rates from Liberty, Heritage. Okay? They put him around 64 out of 100. Now, different groups weigh that in different ways, but can't get a clean answer on where a guy actually landed that's not a green light. And that's a mixed bag depending who's counting. And it's worth knowing before anyone hands Trey Gowdy the loudest microphone in South Carolina. And since he left, he hasn't exactly been sitting still waiting to get back into public service. He went into a law firm. Then he became a contributor on Fox. He was almost brought onto Trump's impeachment legal team until the lobbying rules got in the way. Then he ended up hosting his own show. That's not a criticism by itself. I mean, people build careers, but it's worth asking whether a guy like Trey Gowdy, who's been moving from opportunity to opportunity, is actually hungry for this kind of job, or whether Tim Scott is just hungry to have him. But you know what bothers me the most about this? Scott said himself, he has not seen or heard of an endorsement coming out of the White House. It means Tim Scott is out here publicly recruiting a guy, campaigning for him, basically, before the president of the United States has even weighed in. And theoretically, he may have weighed in. He made the comment on Newsmax about Russell Fry. And this is Trump's party. We know where his head is. I don't care what your politics are. This is just a matter of fact. You don't run out ahead of the president on his own party succession fight before he's even had the chance to make the call, especially when President Trump's endorsement is the single most important factor carrying elections across this country. But it doesn't stop with Gowdy. Scott floated a second name, Darlene Graham. She's already sitting in the seat right now. I mean, Scott said he thinks the truth of the matter is that Darlene has so far been off to a remarkable start, and maybe maybe she'd be the right person. So one conversation, Tim Scott named two people, and neither are Trump's selection. Trump picked her as the caretaker. That's obvious. Okay. So Tim Scott's not just skipping the president. He's shopping the whole field. While the president's actual pick is sitting right here, already in office, already endorsed. Now here's the whole picture. Tim Scott is pushing the hardest of anybody. And the person he's pushing for told us Congress makes him miserable. His own record is a mixed bag. He's not even sitting in Congress right now. He's a TV host. And Scott made his pitch in public twice, floating that and another name, a person who's already there that we know is a caretaker that President Trump recommended and was inevitably nominated by the governor and put into that position. Tim Scott's not vetting anybody. He's getting ahead of the leader of his party for a seat that could end up deciding who sits on the Supreme Court next. And remember, this seat was only ever supposed to be a caretaker situation to begin with. What he said, Darlene Graham, was the long-term answer. The fact that the establishment's own point man in Tim Scott is out here floating people's names right alongside of a guy who already walked away from Congress once tells us caretaker plan was a play, but the establishment doesn't like it. Regardless, Tim Scott's not at odds with Trump. He just needs to talk to him. You know what I have something to add about this, though. Okay, Russell Fry, like I said, and I ran for Congress. Know him personally. I like him. Not some Fox News personality. Already quit a job once because he didn't like it. He ran. He won. He's serving. He's been supportive of the president. He hasn't wavered. Trump handpicked him to run for the House 4 years ago. He delivered. And if the president's already told you who he likes, I can tell you firsthand, he's the real deal. Nope. He's not somebody that, we're hoping turns out to be good. Again, the caretaker was supposed to be temporary. The establishment's own point man is talking about keeping her there or handing it to a guy who already walked away. Filing opens pretty soon, July 21st. We're going to find out soon whether that pitch goes anywhere or whether Republicans fall in line beyond the guy who the president already likes, which I believe they should. Either way, I'll be watching, and you should be too, because this is one of the most important seats that we have in this upcoming election cycle. And while we're going to win it with a Republican, we have to win it with the right Republican.
Is that JR? Yes. But we love you, JR. Thank you very much. Thank you, man. This guy, he's a genius. Thank you, JR. Really nice.